time, and I didn't realize, and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta like try here.
Yeah. All right, so we are going live so that Angela's mom can have insight into our dialogue today. So today we're going to talk about misaligned expectations. So just to remind you, like, the terms of the dialogue are that the idea is not to just exchange concepts. Okay, so like in traditional conversations, a lot of times what we end up doing is just like, I have a set of ideas that I'm going to share with you, and you have a set of ideas that you're going to share with me, and we're just going to a conversation is just trading those ideas, right? Like, I'm going to give you an idea, you're going to give me an idea, and while you're giving me mine, well, you're giving me yours, I'm thinking about mine. Like, right? Like it's super formulaic, right? Where you just kind of, nobody ends up thinking anything different than they came in thinking. And I want to practice in the art of dialogue, practice the process of truly being open-minded enough, coming together with people who we trust, which is in this case each other, and discussing a topic where we hope to obtain new ideas. Like, we hope to truly leave this hour together and be able to think something new, or to have thought through something, even if we haven't like reached a conclusion, right? Like, the goal of dialogue is not to necessarily like tie a pretty bow on a concept. It's just to further our thinking, to broaden our thinking, to deepen our thinking. So just to remind you all, and especially Lynn, since you didn't do one of these yet with us, like, that's kind of the process and that's the goal, loosely termed. And so we'll just all agree to be open-minded. We'll let there be silent times if we're thinking. We're not rushing each other. We're just kind of graciously having a moment together to think together. Any questions about that? I think we all knew this when we signed up because it's on the spreadsheet in detail. So exactly what it's supposed to be. So today we're going to talk about misaligned expectations. And I was just telling the girls, like, I think that, Faith and Angela, I think that the idea of misaligned expectations is a really important one to me, because I think it's the root of all conflict. And I may not be right. I mean, I don't know everything, but I think that, right? And in my life experience, most of the time when you disagree with somebody or when you have conflict with somebody, you can trace it back to a root cause of like, but I expected this to happen, or I expected you to do this, and it was totally unspoken, and yet you violated that unspoken expectation, and the result was that you're in conflict. So to my thinking, an expectation is simply like something that I think will happen. Do we have any other definitions of an expectation before we like dive into how they work and how they affect us? It's hard to define the word expectation without using the word expect, right? It's like what we expect will happen is an expectation. So I think that we can all agree that that's probably pretty much what an expectation is, right? It's what I think will happen. So let's talk first about just the nature of unmet expectations. And maybe I can put this in context in like a really vulnerable way. Do you want me to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to do that?
I mean, it's vulnerable, but not vulnerable, because you all know it. But as you know, Gus is autistic. And one of my son, so one of the early challenges when you have a child who is diagnosed with a condition that has no resolution, right? Like, autism is not like something that can be cured. It is just something that it exists. It's how his brain is. And there's nothing I will ever be able to do to completely change that, right? Like, it's completely set in stone. This is the nature of how he operates, right? We can teach him all kinds of coping mechanisms. It's never going to change, right? When you're pregnant and you're having a baby, you unconsciously project, and maybe even consciously project, all kinds of futures, like what that child will be, what that child will become, right? For me, it's the thing, like, he's going to be the greatest scholar that's ever walked the earth. Like, he's going to contribute to the thoughts of mankind in ways that nobody's ever imagined, right? Like, surely he will be the most brilliant and the most competent and all these things, right? Every parent has a different version of that. But so that was my expectation, right? Like it or not, know it or not, that was kind of what I had expected. So when we got several years in with Gus and it became evident, like his ability to communicate is very different, his ability to think about things is very different. A diagnosis reshapes your expectations and even kills your dreams, right? Like there is every parent who has gone through a diagnosis with their child has to grieve because there are endless things that I don't know. I don't know if he'll ever be able to live on his own. I don't know if he'll ever gain like I don't know at what point he will stop growing. Not physically, but mentally or emotionally or his ability to communicate. Like I have no way of knowing what the timeline will be and what his actual like end game capabilities will be or not. And so that like I guess grief is the primary thing I would say for me that is an outcome of unmet expectations. Like I thought this would happen. This either didn't happen or something else happened. And now I have to deal with it. I have to deal with the fact that this is what I thought would happen. That's not what happened. Now I have to deal with it. That happens on many scales, but for me, that's the illustration of unmet expectations. That's probably the most poignant for me in my life experience. Nobody has to go that deep or be that personal. Just to be clear, and I'm not like setting the standard here for self-disclosure.
No, I have different levels of expectations.
Yeah.
Like my expectation for my kids is to try to do well in school, be kind to others. That's it. My expectations are very low. Like I'm just like, just be a good person, and then we can have fun and be a happy family. My expectation for my husband is different. My coworkers, my family. You know, I think my expectations for my parents have been disappointing. Oh geez, Louise. Oh boy. in ways, you know, you think of one way and then it turns out being a different way as you get older. And then you kind of understand as you become a parent why they make certain choices they do now. And yeah, probably put my foot in my mouth.
But there is, regardless, you know, it's easy to look at somebody and be like, that's an unrealistic expectation. Like if I look at my kids and I'm like, Marigold, it is an unrealistic expectation for you to want my attention 24 hours a day and for you to want over the top positive reactions to everything you ever do. So, I mean, you can look at somebody and be like, this is an unrealistic expectation. And yet they still feel the feeling of an unmet expectation. So I don't think the nature of the expectation, be it high, low, realistic, unrealistic, by whoever decides all of that. I don't think the nature of the expectation itself changes how it feels for it to not be met, right? Like other examples?
I think of like everyday ones, like societal ones, I guess. Like pretty much in the United States, you expect to go to the supermarket and not feel like your life is immediately threatened, or like you expect to have the freedom to voice your ideas and for them to not be like get you in trouble. And I think because they're so common, they're almost like taken for granted, I guess. But then I think about that those expectations are so repetitive and like just normal to us that we often they are unconscious. Like we don't really think about it. And then even like situationally, like where you come from, your family, the faith you grew up in, like those all shape your expectations, which can be like totally different from somebody else's. And it's just like, I don't know, I think about conscious expectations versus unconscious a lot. It's like, to what extent are we supposed to be thinking about our expectations? Because you have to at some point think about them, otherwise you're not going to know how to express them or communicate in conflict, like when they're not met. So it's like, but on the other hand, you can't always be walking around going, what's your expectation for this? What's your expectation for this? So it's like finding that balance in your own life. I don't know, that one, I know that's not a very deep one, but just like even little things, like how your partner looks at you a certain way when you say something and you're like, I expected you to, think that was positive. It's like how you communicate that was not the way they expected you to communicate that. So yeah, you take it however deep you want to go, I guess.
Are you an Enneagram 4, Lindsay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So same. And
Congratulations.
And I feel like as I've gotten older, expectations are something that I have to be super aware of.
Yeah.
And because I feel like I have spent, like I've had too high of expectations about literally everything ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've really had to like rein that in and like learn how to be like, it's okay if this doesn't go exactly like the way that I have decided it's going to go. And if, maybe a holiday, like I have really big expectations around holidays and like, stuff like that. And it's just, they're never going to go the way that you really want them to, I guess, or the way you're building things up in your head. And like to your point, Lindsay, when you're thinking about even just like tiny everyday things, like I've had to really learn how to like tamper expectations so that I'm not like just disappointed at all times.
Yeah.
I actually don't relate to that at all. But I guess that's because I'm an 8. So
yeah, 0. I'm like, did we get through the day? Did everyone eat good? Like survival.
Are you, Angela and Lindsay, like how much would you say like you're a perfectionist?
A lot.
Yeah.
I've gotten better, but it's been like a running theme in my life for sure.
Huh. Yeah, because you wonder too, I mean, it's interesting if we pull the thread of like, okay, how Faith described it of like, my expectations are low. Let's just survive. Let's get through. Let's have good attitudes, right? But then, so really like the self-management component of this is how do you maybe understand and then modify? You use the word tamper, like how do you modify your own expectations so that you don't live in disappointment?
Therapy,
yeah. Highly recommend. 10 out of 10.
I think it's also like self-awareness. Like the more you understand yourself, it's kind of like you can call yourself out on unrealistic expectations or be able to like actually identify and communicate them. But if you're not like taking self-inquiry or anything, I feel like you're more at risk to just be like, everyone should abide by like what I think should be. Really, it's like, no, you're not always right about everything, and not everything should be one certain way, or even the ideal way that you think it should be. It's interesting. I heard something that actually it was I think my boyfriend was talking to me about it. It was like some psychology class, and it said like people who expect horrible things to happen tend to have less of that like grief reaction or the visceral like disappointment because they expected the worst to happen, but then like it wasn't as bad. And then people who have like very like, oh, it'll all work out, it'll be fine, like, or like lack those bad expectations, when things do hit the fan, they are like crumbling because they weren't prepared and like they didn't think about it, and it's just like a shock. I think that is really interesting. So it's like trade-offs. Like you can't always be going around expecting the worst, but at the same time you have to like be in reality and not just be like everything's dandy and like it's going to be great, you know, because that's just not how life is all the time.
That's interesting. Yeah. So the relatedness of perspective and maybe like your orientation towards negative or positive thought. Because we all have that, right? Like some of us live with like a more negative bias, some of us live with a more positive bias. I would definitely be on the positive bias side. Like I'm surprised when anything bad ever happens. Because I'm like, but everyone's awesome. And like the world is like a really good place. So but I'm old enough and realistic enough and have experienced tragedy and all kinds, you know, enough to, I'm not naive about it. I just tend to have a positive bias in my thinking. So yeah, I would say I'm usually surprised when my expectations of things going well aren't met. But I would also say that my general opinion of how things go is positive. Like, it's rare that people disappoint me or I feel like, you know, really betrayed or things like that. Like, so I don't know. Like, I think there's a calibration there that probably happens over time.
Yeah. I also wonder, so I am a pretty anxious person. And so whenever something exciting is gonna like happening or something, any like a bigger thing that like might make me anxious, I think I kind of put all of that anxiety like into like it's gonna be worth it. Like this is gonna be this huge, exciting, like really positive thing. And then if it's like a little less than, then I think that's where it, so I just like, I think I just ramp up, or I have I'm much better at it now, but I think I just like ruminate over things too much and like build them up to be this huge thing when most things probably don't like need that so much.
So that is fascinating because that gets at, if you guys remember in community group a few months ago when we did like the internal conversation, remember we were talking about like, what is your internal dialogue
Oh
like?
yeah, yeah.
How do you talk to yourself? Like, I think we had talked about like how we tend to favor one of three states, which is like past thinking. So like the kind of people who are always like, I shouldn't have said that, or I wish I had done it this way. Like they kind of have more of a bias to like live in the past, or than people who are like present thinkers or people who are like future thinkers. They're always thinking about like, what am I going to do next? What am I going to plan for? How am I going to react when this happens? Like, so I wonder too, if there's a little bit of, depending on what state you tend to live in or what area of focus you tend to have, you dedicate more or less emotion to the you know, so maybe you're thinking about like in the past, this has never worked out for me. So it's probably not going to work out for me in the future. Or like in the future, I'm going to build my whole future with great detail. Yeah. And if that doesn't happen, then it's emotional.
Yeah. I think this is related, but to that thought where I think that I'm like very much a future thinker, and I have a cousin and she is like exactly me but 25 years younger. And we were going to the zoo one time. She was like probably maybe not even 3, maybe 3, and we were in the parking lot of the zoo. I hadn't gone in yet, but she was like so excited and so happy to be at the zoo, and it hadn't happened yet. Like we hadn't seen any animals yet, but she was so excited and she was so worried about it being over that in the parking lot she was like, "Can we come back again?" Like before we had even gone in. And I like saw myself so much in that moment with her, like it was like anxiety of this exciting thing that you've been looking forward to. You're still super excited because none of your expectations have been met or not yet or exceeded or whatever, but you're just like you need the like reassurance that like this isn't the only, like we can do it again, you know, it's not the only time this is going to happen. Like we, you know, and so it was just like a funny, I don't know, I think about that all the time because it was just like such a crazy, like it was such like a light bulb moment for me, and so funny to experience. But I think that is something, and like I don't remember her saying that after the zoo, you know, like, can we come back? Like it was just like she was still like had all these expectations, and she just knew it was gonna be so amazing. So like we need to come back, even though we haven't even been yet.
Anticipatory anxiety.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. What do you think, Faith? Like, where do you tend to fall? Like past, present, future?
I think that I've learned to have healthy expectations when it comes to friends, because I would, like what Lindsay said is like so spot on. It's like crazy. When I was younger, you know, with my friends, and someone would disappoint me, it would crush me. Like, how could they? Like, it was like breaking up with a boyfriend. Like, it was devastating for me when my friends would disappoint me, because I had this expectation that they're going to be there for me. And it probably stems from the fact that you were actually a really good sister, Joy, and you were always there for me, you know? So it's like, and then I walk in with my friends and I'm disappointed, or they're lying, or they're doing this, and it just broke me. Yeah. I've had to walk away from friendships because I've learned to like safeguard myself and have this expectation of being like, no, you shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. And when you do, I need to walk away for my health, my heart health, you know? I'm learning more. I think having children has really helped me, because like you said, you have an expectation for your child, and then it's just the polar opposite of what it's like, you know, and you can't control it. There's nothing you can do. I'm learning, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. What do you think? I mean, we talked kind of a little bit about what unmet expectations feel like, maybe devastation into grief, or like disappointment, grief, things like that. I mean, it sounds like, Faith, you've used you've learned from unmet expectations, where it's like, okay, well, then I'm going to make a different decision next time because, well, and maybe that's not even that you've learned from them, or that it's just that you've learned to shift your expectations. Like, I had historically this expectation that a friend means these attributes and behaviors: loyalty, honesty, whatever, right? Your trust gets violated, and then you shift your expectation, right? So now my definition of a friend and my expectation of how people will treat me is different based on how people have treated me.
Yeah. And then as I got older, I realized too, like, because when I was younger, it'd be like what I put into a friendship, I expected back. Right. And then I would be disappointed or whatever, or like not showing up for things when I would show up for things. And then as I got older and friends have gone through bigger issues, like, you know, change, divorce, children, moving, whatever, you realize like, okay, this isn't really you talking, this is something else. So I need to have that expectation that you're in a moment of crisis, and that what you're giving me isn't necessarily what you are, you know, you don't realize that. So yeah, it just changes, I think.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So unmet expectations could actually, if you're like constructive about it, have a positive outcome. Right?
Yeah. Because I think that you learn, like what Faith is saying, you definitely learn to like, it gives you more self-awareness for like, okay, this is what I was thinking was going to happen, but this person didn't perform in a certain way, but here's why. And that doesn't need to like this person is just going through something, or, you know, anything like that. I think it is a positive. I think me, for my whole life, having unmet expectations has taught me well to like recalibrate.
What do you think, Lindsay?
I think, yeah, it can be constructive, and it can also be positive. Like, I'm somebody who tends to expect more like negative outcomes. And then, so like even little, okay, so my partner one day brought home this giant fancy goldfish. And I was like, what are we gonna do with that? Like, because we have a fish tank, right? And I was like, immediately, I was like, I don't like it. We need a bigger tank. It's not gonna be happy in our tank. Like, why did you get that? Like, all these negative expectations. Like, what are we gonna feed it? What if it has problems? How old is it? Like, we don't know anything about this fish. Um, but then, like, after a month, I was like, I love this fish. It's so like pleasant to have in our fish tank, and he's adorable and like the biggest personality. And so it's like my expectations of, oh, I don't like this fish, it's not going to be a good experience, was like, oh, it's actually like a really cool thing that we like get to enjoy this fish. I don't know. That's like such a weird example, but like through that, it sparked this conversation between my partner and I of like, yeah, like you always say, oh, um, like this shouldn't be happening, or I don't like this. But then like if you just let go of that, I typically I've found that I'm like, oh, like it's not that bad, or I actually am enjoying this, or like it grows on me, this type of thing, you know, like, oh, it'll grow on you. So that's fun. And like Angela said, it's kind of allowed me or encouraged me to kind of like check my expectations, and kind of not cling to them so much, or even going into certain things, even like traveling or flying. I have to like tell myself like, okay, I don't have any expectations. Like I know the times I need to be there. I know my seat. I know who's picking me up, and that's pretty much it. Like anything could happen in between those things, and those things might not even happen the way I expect them to. So it's like you kind of just go into it with like realistic expectations, knowing that reality could change it at any time.
How much of expectations and how you set them or understand them or project them onto other people has to do with your style of control? So, like, for
I
instance.
don't know what that means.
Yeah. For instance, I'm going to do it for instance. I am not a controlling person. Like, I'm just not. I don't want to be in control, which is hilarious because I'm like, whatever. It's ridiculous. The most of the roles I'm in require me to be in control, but I'm not interested in it. I don't want anybody to answer to me. I don't want to be in control. I don't want to tell my kids what to do. Like, I'm not interested in controlling anything at all, ever. Like, I want a hands-off life experience. Like, now I have, obviously in 4 decades, have come to realize that's not realistic, and I have to, exercise control many times. But I have a very low need for control. I'm okay with the universe being chaos and things happening to me that are totally unpredictable. Like it just doesn't bother me. I'm very flexible. I don't need to know what I'm going to eat. I don't need to know where I'm going to sleep. Like I hitchhiked around Europe for like 4 months in my early 20s and just like would sleep in like a train station. One time I just like got tired and slept on a bush on the side of the road. Like I just don't care. Like I don't need predictability. Like I'm fine. I would like go to a train station and just like try to meet somebody so that I could go home with them so that they could feed me dinner. Like just that's like the level of control I need over my life, which is not always healthy, but that's just how I'm wired, right? Like so I'm very comfortable with that. And I have very low a very low level of conscious expectations about almost anything. Like with our business, with our clients and stuff. I'm like, this may work out and it may not work out. And I don't have a feeling about it. Like, I don't feel one way or another. Like, if it works out, great, it was supposed to work out. If it doesn't work out, great, it wasn't supposed to work out. Like, I feel that way when we're doing sales. I feel that way when we're doing work. Like, we're always going to give it our best effort. And sometimes it'll be the perfect fit and sometimes it won't. And I don't really have a lot of emotion about it either way. So it takes a pretty significant, like the example I started with, like a pretty significant level of embedded expectation for me to experience like grief or disappointment. And so I'm just wondering, like, if the fact that I'm just kind of wired with a low need for control means that I have low expectations because I don't really care that much how things end up. Like, that sounds dismissive, but if I'm being candid, like, yeah, I don't know. Like, this, my whole life could change tomorrow, and I think I'd be okay. Like,
And also, I don't think it sounds dismissive. I think it just sounds like you have faith or like trust and like you're not in control. It's just, you know, your only responsibility is you. And like, I don't know. That's how I took it.
but can you make that like self-analysis and equivocation for yourself? Like, how much control you feel like you need, and then how much it affects your expectations.
Is that like rhetorical or are you asking me
No,
specifically?
like I'm asking the group.
Okay. For me, I think it's, I don't know. For most of my like beginning of life, I had no control and it was very like chaotic and unpredictable. So I think that kind of shaped me to pursue control, but like in kind of maladaptive ways, I guess. Like,
We're all laughing, like maladaptive. Like,
I don't know.
Sorry, that
I
was
don't
the
know.
wrong response.
It's
But
dumb.
I get it. Like,
Like, it's not healthy,
using
or
it
like
there.
I'll try, like, in my early 20s, I definitely would try to like, not in like a malicious way or anything, but I found myself not directly just asking or like saying what I wanted. So I would like go a roundabout way and try to like manipulate situations, not consciously really, but I would, you know, I felt like I had to control things, but at the same time, I was scared to like just be direct about it.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of wasn't healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and then it can get like extreme where you're very uptight about things, you know, and that's like not a fun way to live life. So yeah, I think it's like a balance of finding order, or like, I guess control is to some extent how people try to find order in life. Like, so maybe it's like having to do with the amount of chaos versus order like you're surrounded with. I don't know.
Of course, you have to bring up origin issues.
I mean, that's what I think about
But
a
that's
lot.
so wise. Yeah, no, but you're exactly right. Like, that's where it comes from for the most part.
Yeah, I think, and expectations in general, like probably origin has a lot to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that means I had no expectations, Joy, growing up. My parents had no expectations for me. You're just babe. She's just babe. She's in the field. She's fine. It's so sad.
No, but I think, I mean, to Lindsay's point, like, I mean, the way you and I grew up was very ordered, right? We knew exactly how to behave. We knew what was expected of us. Like, so I don't mean to be cavalier or to be like, well, that's just how I am. Like, at the end of the day, my ability to be blasé about things is very much rooted in the expectation of security. Like, I have a security blanket. I have a trust fall. Like, I have a net, you know? And so knowing that gives you the confidence then. Like, I have the fundamental expectation I will be loved and I will be taken care of. And that is embedded from baby. Like that, I mean, right? So then I'm able to live all these seasons of life, you know. But Faith and I are very different, obviously, and we were raised in the same household. So what do you think? Like a level of control that you like to have over your life, and then expectations and how that interplays?
Yeah, I don't know. I was never a risk taker like you. So I was like, I like being home. I like that safety net, like you said. I like having that.
Mm-hmm.
I would never do something like that ever. I would never just go travel by myself and trust people ever.
I know.
You know? But then I with my kids, like I said, we had a lot of expectations growing up, but like with my kids, I'm like, your only expectation is to be a good person. That's it. Like, express yourself however you want. Mommy's always here.
What do you think, Angela? Control, expectations. Is there a connection?
Yeah, I don't know. Because I don't really want to be in control. Like, I don't want to make the decisions. I don't want to be in charge. But I also want things to go how I want them to go.
You remind me so much of somebody I know. And Joy knows who I'm talking about. I can't say it though, but it's just your whole personality, and I love it.
Yeah, I don't know. And I had plenty of, order and trust and stuff at home and as a childhood. I think I don't know. I think a lot of where my expectations are unmet, I think does come from just my anxious, like, future thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And wanting everything to line up and like feel as magical and fun and whatever as I'm expecting. So I don't know.
Yeah.
So would you say that's like kind of idealism? Like you fall into being idealistic?
Yeah.
Like it's not an expectation?
Yeah, maybe so. I've never thought of that.
Do you have expectations for like your life, like the quality of your life? Like some people are like, I'm going to have this, that, and the other. And if I don't have these things, then, that's what I expect.
We're not asking you whether you're materialistic.
No. I mean, it's just, I know, like if things happened, right, and I had to, uproot and leave my house and go to we would figure it out. Like my expectation for my life wouldn't crumble because of it,
I honestly, I don't think I have so much expectations for like things need to look this way and I need to make this much money and I need to live in this kind of house and in this place. But I think my expectations are always more about how I feel. Like about the feelings of certain experiences and how I want my life to feel at certain points, which sounds so like hippy dippy as I'm saying it, but
no, that's fascinaing.
And also so Enneagram 4.
Yeah.
But
I'll give you that.
Like this is not something I've ever thought about before, but I think I always am like, that's going to feel magical and I'm going to remember it forever, or like this is going to feel like fun and hilarious and like that's what I want to take forward, like I think it's always more about the feeling rather than how something looks or like the actual constructs of it.
That is so interesting.
Your wedding is going to be amazing. Magical.
I was gonna say that. Like I remember as a teen girl, you start thinking like, oh, my wedding day, or like whatever. I would always imagine like how it would feel, not like how it would look, what dress I was wearing. Like, I mean, to an extent, a little bit, but just like how it would feel in the presence of like my future husband or whatever. That's what I would romanticize.
Interesting.
Yeah. I walked into our weddings and we're like, is this thing over yet? Can we go? It was terrible. It was terrible. I'm like, oh my God.
No, but it's just so, that is like observation and like tuning into the way you think. Cause like, I'm the exact opposite. Like when I think ahead to the future, so like, for instance, let's pretend like I'm daydreaming about having written a best-selling novel. All I do is daydream the logistics. Like, okay, I'm going to go on this talk show. What am I going to wear? What am I going to talk about? There's going to be 3 talking points. Like, I only ever brainstorm logistics of things. Like, if it's the future house, it's like, okay, we're going to redo the basement. I'm going to daydream about that. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's going to be the color palette. Here's the contractors I would need to hire. Here's the schedule I'd want to do it in. Where would we move while it's being renovated? Like,
Oh
This
my
is the
God.
worst daydream ever.
that's how I daydream.
Sorry.
Like, that's literally how I daydream.
And this is why Fireflies suggested that you plan her wedding, Joy.
Yeah. They're like, this girl needs help with logistics. She's only worried about feeling like she's like loved that day. So could you like help her?
Can I get you an itinerary? But I find that very soothing. Like, I find it very comforting to
Well, that stresses me out.
I feel like I'm thinking in advance, and then I'm saving the brain power in the moment. I'm like, score, I already planned that. Like,
That's so funny.
that's interesting. So let's talk about misaligned expectations. So I kind of started this dialogue with the premise that I think misaligned expectations are the core of most conflict. Like, how does that happen? How do you get to the root of it? Is there any time in which you like can't work past it? Like, you expected this, I expected that, ne'er the two shall meet. Like, there's no return. Like, yeah, let's just talk that through a little bit. Because I think if we were to like, I mean, we can talk about it in personal or professional contexts, but like, if I were to say like one thing that I've probably learned the most, and I would say like the last 3 years of client management, is expectation management, right? So like, here's what I'm going to deliver to you. Here's what it's going to look like. Here's when you're going to get it. Here's what I expect you to do with it. Like, that is kindness, because you're bringing clarity to the situation. And even in sales, like when I sell for any of the businesses, like, it's all about, here's an example. Here's what this would look like if we worked together. Here's what the timeline would be. Here's like getting more and more detailed about that, and just managing people's expectations of like, okay, if this is going to be, I said end of business, but it's going to be 7 p.m. I'm emailing you to tell you that, because I promised, that it was going to be 5 p.m., whatever. So how important are managing how do you set somebody's expectations and get ahead of unspoken expectations? So it's like, I've learned I just need to not say some stuff, because even my words hold a different kind of weight as a boss. So sometimes if I say something on the fly or spontaneously or brainstorming, people take it a different way, and then it creates an expectation. So yeah, I have personally like wrestled through a lot of that in the last couple of years. So I think it would be interesting to put it to the group and just see like, either personally or professionally. Yeah. What are unmet expectations? Why do they happen? Can we avoid them? I've asked like 8 questions now, so I'll stop.
I think it's all about communication, right? Like, you have to speak up, and you have to, like you say, like, tell them exactly what they're gonna get. Like, that obviously this is more of a professional situation, probably not the same personally, but and I think that's a learned thing, where you have to tell people what to expect. And I think another thing that you're good at, Joy, is telling people what to expect and telling people what you expect. And I think that is that second part, what you expect, telling people what you expect, is hard for me, because that goes against like the people pleasing, and that's like ingrained in me. But yeah, what was your original question? I forgot.
There were like 8 of them. So what happens when it's unmet?
Oh, right.
Yeah. Or misaligned. Like,
yeah. I don't know.
Problems.
Yeah, thanks.
Problems. Yeah. I think, if we were to say like, how do things get misaligned? It's because people don't communicate their expectations. Right. Like, what will this relationship be like? Right? That is a very important question in sales, in business, in our personal lives. Like, what is your expectation from me for this relationship? I literally, and maybe I'm overcorrecting from like seasons of flippancy, but like, we sat down with Marigold's teacher And I mean, the first time I met her, I was like, what do you expect from us as parents? And she was like, nobody's ever asked me that before. And I was like, yeah, but I need to know. Like, because I don't want to not meet your expectations and have you be like, well, parents don't contribute, or parents don't give me money, or parents don't, like, I want to know what you expect from me, you know? And what other ways do we see expectation misalignment happen?
I would say the big ones, like the big disappointment of expectations, is if you have like different or even opposite values as somebody. Because if they're valuing one thing and you're valuing another thing and they clash, like obviously your expectations are not going to be fulfilled, because values are very core to like what people are willing or not willing to do. Yeah.
And I think forcing yourself to ask what your expectations are. I mean, a lot of times, like asking that question cold of like, what do you expect? Most people haven't thought about it. I don't know. Just do what I'm
Yeah.
wearing. Yeah. Or whatever. And like asking that question of yourself, though, I think can be a helpful form of like interrogation, to be like, what am I really expecting? Because I know, like, for me, I mean, to be candid, like early on, it was like, okay, I am busting my butt building this business. I work around the clock. I expect the people who work for me or with me to be there for me if I need them. And that was absolutely an expectation that got trodden, destroyed, vaporized, and I had to drink the bitter pill of like, they don't care. And that's not, you can't let that crystallize into callousness, but I had to be realistic. Like, nobody who works for me cares as much about the business as I do. That's an unrealistic expectation for me to bring. I'm the boss. I'm here to serve them, and they're here to work for me. And if they work for me, then them serving me or being there for me or thinking about me is an unrealistic expectation. That's not their role. Right? So and I had those disappointments, I think, early on, when I felt let down, or I felt like people weren't there for me and they weren't able to pick up the slack, or even they would like drop work and put more work on my plate. You know, it was just like heartbreaking. Truly, like, it was emotional, until I kind of had to just edit those expectations and be like, that's not fair. That's not fair for me to put that. They're not signing up for that. That's not an expectation that they would agree to meet. Right. So, and if I don't communicate, so say like that's an unrealistic expectation. I think there are also like expectations that I would say are realistic, like about work product or work ethic or behavior or conduct or things like that. If I don't say it, I can't hold people accountable for it. Like, if I don't express my expectation, I can't get mad when somebody doesn't meet that expectation, because I didn't tell them that I expected that from them. Right? Like, I have to explicitly state. And even, I mean, this works like at home too. Like, hey, honey, I expect you as the stay-at-home husband to do the laundry and put it away. If you don't, I will be disappointed. And then he's able to negotiate and say, it's going to happen in this timeline or not. And it's these things, you know, like, it's a collaborative thing. But like, for me to be like, he didn't do the laundry and then be mad about it is totally unfair. Did I express that expectation, that like I was bringing that expectation to the plate, like to the table? I don't know. Maybe you guys disagree, but I feel like that is my responsibility to be like.
I think that's really helpful. And I think that's a good thing that a lot of people don't think about. I don't know. In my experience, I've noticed a lot of people kind of just run life like on assumptions a lot of time. Like, they just assume. Like, the one that bugs me the most is like people assuming that everybody should one day like come to this realization that your worldview is correct, or like everyone should think like you, or like, I just don't get it. Like, even friends, like, oh, your beliefs changed and I didn't expect that. And like, who are you now? And like, how can we still be friends? It's just like, what? Like, I don't know, people expecting you to like think, or just assuming that you'll stay the same, or like believe a certain thing. Assumptions are very difficult to live by. I don't know if that fits in with expectations, but
Well, I like it because I think, I mean, the way I was illustrating like expectation setting is very much tied to the idea of assumptions, because assumptions are relationally lazy. Like, if you can create a box and a persona for somebody and then keep them in that, you don't ever have to do the work of rediscovery. You don't ever actually have to do the work of relationship building. You just have a static state persona and you interact on the same basis and you have the same rules of engagement forever. And that's not loving, right? Or kind, or really even a relationship. It's just a gesture.
yeah.
So yeah, your expectations for what you want from other people can change, but you have to express that and allow the fluidity of their expectations of you change as well. Thoughts on that, guys? Like relational expectations or workplace?
Well, I mean, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. You have expectations for family, and when it doesn't happen the way you think it, but then you, like I was saying before, like people go through things in stages of life, and if you love someone, you'll give them like the grace to have that moment, and your expectations can change.
But I think most of the time you have to initiate the conversation. So like now that we've had this dialogue and that this concept is top of mind, like, I don't know, it's making me think about like certain conversations I should probably have with people, right? If I have disappointment for people, either professionally or personally, I need to rethink what my expectations are. Have I ever actually articulated those are those expectations fair? Have I ever actually articulated those expectations? And can I release the outcome? Like, at the end of the day, when it comes to the outcome of like events in our lives, maybe we have some agency. When it comes to the outcome of relationships, we have very little to no agency over how things will turn out, right? And just kind of making peace with that, I think, can help us evaluate and then loosen our grasp on like, it has to be this way. Well, does it? And why? And I'm assuming that's because I think I have all the information and I know what's best. So like, is that accurate? Like take the trip a little bit in our own hearts and minds and think about how we relate to each other on this team, how we relate to the people in our life, how we relate to our clients. I think even a little bit of self-reflection, I don't know, I'm feeling motivated.
We're going to have like a Festivus.
Got a lot of problems with you people.
Got a lot of problems with you people.
Just air the grievances.
Air the grievances.
Yeah, we have so much conflict in our business.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm always like, you guys can talk about anything. You can bring anything. I mean, that's fine. It's great. Toxic positivity or something. It's probably my fault. All right. Well, thanks for this, you guys. Any other thoughts about expectations, misaligned expectations? Any final thoughts?
I have a weird one.
I like
Do
weird.
you think like the placebo effect is that say about expectations? Like,
Yeah.
if you believe something will work or is going to be positive, will that alter how you experience something?
absolutely. Because you think like, I mean, even that plays into negativity positivity bias, right? The placebo effect is all about the idea that this is going to make me better, or this is going to have some kind of effect. And even if you're not in taking something that is going to have an effect, you experience effects. The brain is very powerful.
Yeah, it's trippy.
It's trippy. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. Here, I'll end this and then we can wrap up.